And welcome back to Capitol Tonight. So throughout the gubernatorial campaign and into the transition, Andrew Cuomo has seen a former rival transformed into one of his strongest supporters. Carl McCall weathered a failed gubernatorial primary challenge from Cuomo back in 2002 that actually almost cost the governor-elect his career. But the two Democrats have long since buried the hatchet. The former state comptroller stood by Cuomo when it seemed he might challenge Governor David Paterson, New York's first black chief executive. And then when the black community criticized the lack of diversity on the statewide ticket this fall, Carl McCall was there again. Now he is siding with Cuomo yet again, this time against the public employee unions. And Mr. McCall joins us tonight from New York City. How are you, sir? Nice to see you.
I'm great, Liz. How are you?
I am fine, thanks. I'm fine. Thanks for joining us.
Good. Good to be here.
I wanted to talk to you about this new committee that is being formed, the Committee to Save New York. I understand that you are going to be named a co-chair?
That's right, and you know, you characterized it as a group that's being formed to oppose New York unions.
I did.
That's not the purpose at all. The purpose of this is to save New York City, to save New York State, rather, to try to get the state to become functional, to make sure that the state has the resources and the ability to provide opportunity for people. As you know, I've for a long time been an advocate for public education and making sure other kids have the opportunity I had to have a good education. But we can't do that now. The state doesn't operate properly. We don't have the resources. We don't set our priorities right. The legislature and the governor don't get along. Special interest groups come in and dominate the situation, and they get what they want and other people get left out. We just have to make sure that New York is a place that functions properly.
Well, if that's the case then who is it? Somebody's got to give up to get, right? In other words,
not somebody, Liz, everybody. All of us have to sacrifice a little. See, that's it. We can't put the burden on any one group. We've got to make sure that everybody realizes that things are going to be different.
And who doesn't realize that then? Who doesn't realize that in your opinion?
Most people. I think most people don't realize that. Most people think that, you know, that New York has this unlimited ability to take care of everybody's needs all the time. And we've got to set some priorities. There are some things we can do and some things we can't do. And for instance, we can't continue to charge people property taxes that they can't afford. Property taxes in New York go up by about 7% every year. We can't afford that. So when the governor-elect and others talk about capping property taxes, that's a realistic thing. It's something we have to do.
So when we say, Carl, that the business community, with some assistance from people like yourself and Dick Parsons, are going to raise $10 million, what are you going to use the money for?
We're going to try to educate people. We're going to try to show people that some of the things that are being done now don't work. And we're going to try to make some suggestions about how we can reform the way we do business in New York. And we want to bring a variety of people, including unions and others, to the table to help find those solutions. When things aren't working, it means you've got to cooperate to make them work. You know, back in the 70s when New York City had its fiscal crisis, this is what happened. Unions, the banks, other people came together and they came up with a solution. But look what happened in New York. New York had to have a financial control board to make that happen. New York lost its ability to make decisions about how to use its resources. We don't want that to happen at the state level, but that could.
Okay.
So what I'm hoping is to be at the table so we can begin to find some solutions so that New York is workable, that New York functions, that New York continues to provide opportunities for all of its citizens.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, but the reason why I bring up the public employee unions are because this is the area where the governor-elect has made it quite clear that he's looking for concessions, and so far we haven't heard much in the realm of them agreeing. They in fact have fought everything that Governor Paterson has tried to do.
Well, Governor Paterson is gone. It'll be Governor Cuomo, and I think I understand he's been reaching out to the unions, and hopefully we will have discussions with them. I'd like to be part of those discussions. Yes, unions might have to give up things, but not only the unions. As I said before, I think we all have to make sacrifices. We all have to find new ways of doing business. And as I pointed out, there's a precedent for that. One of the people heading up the committee is Felix Rohatyn.
Right.
He was there when New York City went through this kind of crisis in the 70s, and he brought people together from all sides and they found realistic solutions. New York was in better shape and continues in many ways to be in better shape because of the solutions that were found when people were willing to come and sit down at the table and admit that what we have does not work, and we have to find a better way of serving the needs of the people of this state.
Okay, when you say educate people, $10 million to educate people, you mean through an ad campaign or something else?
Well, I mean through an ad campaign. I think by showing people that some of the things are not working, and as we work together to find solutions, to suggest to people that these are the kind of solutions they should support, and they should support political people, elected officials, who are in line with those particular solutions.
Do you, I mentioned at the top of this interview that at one point in time you and Andrew Cuomo were rivals, actually. He ran
That's
against
right.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
Sure,
believe...
he did. And lost, remember. He
yes,
lost.
I do recall that.
Okay.
What do you,
all right.
And I'm sure that you bring that up to him, too, all the time.
No, I don't have to bring that up, no.
Do
you know,
you...
this thing about my relationship with Andrew, it's not a big... Listen, there's an old adage in politics that you don't have permanent friends or permanent enemies. You only have permanent interest. And when your interests are in line with the interests of somebody else, then you support them. And that's the way it is now. I think that Andrew Cuomo is coming to Albany to bring about some significant changes. And I support that. And therefore, I support him. So it's, it's not a big deal.
But how has he changed since 2002, do you think, to make him ready for this job?
Well, I think I don't know that he's changed, his psyche is any different. I think he realizes the situation that we are in. And he realizes the burden he has to try to find some solution. And that's what he's going to try to do. I think he's worked very hard to convince people that he is sincere about being a public servant committed to change. He spent a lot of time outlining some specific prescriptions about the things that need to happen in New York, and most of these things make sense, and therefore I'd like to be supportive to see that some of those things are implemented.
Do you want to have a role in the administration at all, or this is going to be strictly outside?
No, not really. Well, I have a role now. I mean, a role. I'm on the board of the state university. As I told you, I care very much about higher education.
Right.
I'd probably like to stay there, but I'm not looking for any role. I'm certainly not looking for a job, but to the extent that I can provide advice, as I will be as a member of this committee, that's the kind of thing I'd like to do.
Much was made during the campaign and a little bit since about diversity and the importance of diversity and the lack of diversity on the statewide Democratic ticket. Also, you said, and I remember quite clearly actually on New York One, our sister station where you are now, that you didn't think that it should be about race, that we shouldn't really be talking about race when it was possible that Andrew Cuomo would challenge David Patterson. What are your feelings now?
Those are two different things.
They are, true.
I felt that it was unfair to say that Andrew ran against me, that was some racially motivated, that he ran against me because I was African American. He ran against me because he thought he could beat me, and he made a mistake and he couldn't. I mean, that's that simple. But diversity is a different thing. I think that we have to have diversity within state government. We have to have men, and we have to have women, and we have to have various ethnic groups represented if we want to have a government that people believe is standing there representing them. And I think Andrew Cuomo's committed to that. As you know, he just made his first group of appointments, and that reflected that diversity. And I hope he will have the same kind of diversity in his other appointments as he goes forward. I'm a member of the Transition Committee, and one of my responsibilities there is to see that we have those diversity in our appointments at all levels of government.
In parting, we're about to see David Patterson step off the public stage. He was governor, obviously thrust into the role, pretty surprised about it at the time. What do you think?
He was surprised.
He was, as was New York, What do you think his legacy will be, and do you think he did a good job as governor?
Well, I think we said you have to start off with the fact that he was thrust in this job. He wasn't prepared for the job. He never thought he'd have the job. It wasn't a job that he particularly wanted. And he came into it at a time when, you know, the state was facing this terrible fiscal crisis. To his credit, he was clear, told people the truth about the crisis, and really tried to find some solutions. I think the media was very unfair to him in many ways. Yes, he made some mistakes. Yes, he didn't have perhaps the most qualified people surrounding him, but I think the media was quite unfair. But overall, I think David did, given the circumstances that he found himself in and given the fact he never had a appropriate transition to prepare for the job, I think he did a good job. You know, let me give you one example. Some of the things that he's been doing lately in terms of closing down these juvenile facilities where we're warehousing kids, spending over $220,000 per year per juvenile delinquent, and these kids leave this facility and 3 months later they're back in the criminal justice system. David Patterson's been the only governor who's willing to stand up and say, we are closing down these facilities, we're not going to do this anymore. That's not an appropriate economic development program for upstate New York. I think that's a real achievement. I think the fact that David did really stand up and tell us how difficult the fiscal situation was, and he did some interesting things to bring about change. The fact that he used to submit these emergency budgets on a weekly basis, but insert into those emergency budgets basic budget reductions that he never would have gotten through the legislature if he hadn't done it that way. So he did some very good things.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Carl McCall, for joining us. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you, Liz. Thanks for having me.